for you or something?
No, I was just told to be here in case any questions come up.
Oh, okay, cool.
So we ready?
All right, I'm ready. Thank you. All right, meeting of the Finance Committee is called to order at 2:18 p.m. on May 11, 2026. Thanks, everybody, for being here with us today. What we're going to do today is go through the Finance Committee report. We've got it up on the screen, and really, we'll just walk through it. I'm not going to read every section by any means. The point is to just kind of go section by section. If one of my colleagues on the committee has something that they feel like we need to further discuss, just jump in and raise it, and then we will vote on the recommendations for each section. We can start right here in the top. Maybe not right in the top unless any of you have an issue with my Wes Moore quote. But I think making clear what the priorities that were most commonly mentioned were is a really good way to start this off strong. So we're working through exactly how to mention these. So transportation infrastructure, or perhaps just improved infrastructure, which we have sidewalks, crosswalks, walkability, street lights, speed reduction, smart signals, and raised intersections. I think that covers it.
I'm sorry, Harry.
Yeah.
Isn't there a part of this report that's in here?
You're saying report to the city council, like it should be able to break out? I think the first thing should be the quote.
The quote does,
I see what you're saying. No, there was a graphic
yeah.
beforehand. Mitchell is updating that graphic.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Is there anything else we were missing? Yes, because that was in there. She actually had already updated it, but the one thing she didn't change was changing 26 to 27. So she's just got to fix it.
Okay.
Okay, so improved infrastructure, I've just copied what was from that presentation. So sidewalks, crosswalks, walkability, street lights, speed reduction, smart signals, raised intersections.
Yeah, I think that's,
Yeah, I think that just about gets at it. And then with that, I'd be fine with deleting this better service delivery for residents.
meeting with what?
Better service delivery for residents is inclusive of
The reason I think we could delete it is because youth and community programs and environment and sustainability more or less cover it. Maybe the one thing that I'm seeing in here, or that I'm not seeing in here, that was on my mind under service delivery is improved permitting times. So maybe I could just lump that under environment and sustainability.
For service delivery.
Well, no, I'm suggesting we delete service delivery because I think it's covered under other things. Or if you think there's enough things that are not covered, we could put a parenthesis behind it and list a couple things.
Okay, so service delivery was not a term used in the brief.
Correct.
So that's why you're adding it there, because it was
Well,
talked about.
So I wrote better service delivery. And then you suggested later that we just use the terms from the brief, which I think is smart. So service delivery is sort of a holdover. And I'm suggesting we either cut it, or if there are parts of service delivery that are not in here currently, that we put a parenthesis to say what we mean by service delivery.
How about, I like your idea of service delivery in it. I think Karma had something, but, you know, to your point, parent, permits, parking, removal.
Snow and garbage removal?
Yep.
Yeah. That works fine.
This thing, the residents are asking for better service.
Okay. Unless there are any more comments on that section about top priorities, I suggest we move on. Alderman Thorpe had a great suggestion to swap out this Annapolis graphic for something that says Annapolis Works. I think that's really relevant to the new mayor. Ms. Jackson, can you take care of checking in with either the PIO or somebody else in the mayor's office to get a pretty little Annapolis Works graphic for us?
I'm sure that Mitchell could do something like that. This was created from a council retreat that we had 3 years ago. So that was the priorities and the topics for conversation at the time. So it's been used over and over because of that.
Yeah.
Because that was sort of the continuing theme through the last term. So,
All the more reason it makes sense to update it.
And to be clear, when I say that says Annapolis Works, a graphic that says Annapolis Works, which is, I think, what you were, just Annapolis Works, but
Yeah.
a cool graphic that says Annapolis, that communicates the message,
Yep.
Annapolis Works.
all of these little subs are what make Annapolis work, but
I hear you. These are important ones. Okay, so moving on to general fund revenue. I updated all these numbers. There should not be anything that's shocking to either of you. I think one thing that was a little bit surprising to me that I'll flag for you was as far as the revenue increase of the general fund, most of it is due to property tax revenue. That's not surprising, but also an additional $1.2 million in income tax growth, which I was a little bit surprised by. So just flagging that for your awareness. And we don't have any recs in this section. So anything you guys want to discuss?
So I give you two the license to say we're not going to talk about this today. But I don't know that we can really do anything about, and I know it's been a topic for a long time about that almost 2/3 of our revenue comes from private, but are we really going to put any effort to diversify that, or is that our revenue sources? I mean,
Yeah, it's a fair question.
it's actually arguably a good thing.
when we signed that resolution back in March that we wanted to be able to look at this, what the state is doing with both sales tax and other issues. So we did sign on saying we were interested in exploring other revenue opportunities for the city, and that's one of them. And I believe that the mayor's suggested philanthropic consultant would be not revenue necessarily, but a counter
Incoming money.
against, incoming funding that
Yeah.
would counter against what we need for revenue for our expenses,
That's a great point.
if that makes sense.
Yep. No,
But to your point, Alderman Thorpe, I do think it's fair to point out, like, if we're going to put this as a challenge, we're going to put it as our number one challenge here, which they're not really in order, but it is the first one. We should have a hearing on this. This is something we should talk about in the intervening year. And as I mentioned, I got a list. I think we're up to 8 or 9 topics for us to have finance committee hearings about over the next year. Also, just flag for you guys under challenges, that there was a worry in the last one about tightening of state and federal grant availability. We have seen that borne out to some extent, but I think not as much as we were maybe worried about last year. So this is, that's why I wrote some.
I thought we were seeing more than we saw last year because, for instance, in OEM, where they had 3 positions that have been grant funded, we're now funding them from the general fund.
Right. I'm sorry, maybe I misspoke. I meant we have seen less than I think we were worried about happening, but we definitely have seen more than this time in 2025. But as I remember last year, we were like, oh my God, we're going to lose all of our federal money. So that was how I guess that was my baseline.
so you just said something I really like, which is kind of a criteria for challenges,
Fancy.
which is the criteria as we go through this is, does it kind of come to or get close to the threshold to have a city council work session? That would make sense as a good rough idea, not that we bound ourselves by it,
Yeah.
but if it's a challenge, it's something we think is that significant.
Yeah, there were 1 or 2 places on here, I have to say, where it had been listed as a challenge in the previous year. And I looked at it again this year and I was like, man, we should have done something to think a little harder about that in the past year.
That would be really actionable if we could turn that over to Neely and.
Yeah, I'd be happy to sort through that with you. Okay. Moving on, nothing terribly surprising in the expenditure column. Ms. Jackson, do you know whether this graphic has already, or maybe it's Capri, this graphic that we're looking at here has been updated or not?
Yes, it's updated.
Thank you.
Can I?
Yeah, jump in anytime.
It might be too late to do this, but would it have been a good idea to keep the 26 information in there?
Yeah,
This is our report on the 27 budget.
I think it could be confusing in this case. I get why you might want to. I get why there are definitely situations where we want to be able to look at the difference. But I don't think having two pie charts side by side would be the best way to do it. It's just like in OpenGov, I can look at the stacked bars if I want to look over time, or I can look at the pie graph for just 1 year. But we could have the stacked bars. I mean, it just would be, it would get really confusing for this where we have so many different categories.
In the past, the public has appreciated the pie graph because it's easier to follow with all of those.
All right.
But I appreciate you asking the question. I mean, that's what we're trying to do here, is make sure we have the best process. This is not a huge deal, but Ms. Turner, if there's a way to correct that so city council's not at 0%, if we could be at 0.1 or something, that would be wonderful.
I can see if it allows me to update it to show a point.
If it doesn't, that's fine. Don't worry about it too much. But
Okay. If anything, we can add a note underneath.
We'd appreciate the acknowledgement of just how cost effective we are. Moving along to the fund allocation to capital reserve and budget stabilization fund, this is nothing terribly surprising. Oh, I'm realizing, I guess I didn't change the color when I did this, apologies. But these are all updated, and it's a pretty darn simple formula. But obviously the thing anyone can notice is that we do have less one-time use money at the end of this than in previous years. Feel free to stop me if there's something you want to talk about. Moving on to debt capacity, very similar, that there's nothing terribly surprising in this. I think really the only difference is that in the previous budget cycle, we were talking about the FY26 debt service, and we saw that 2 years after that was when debt service cracked 10%. So it was FY28 in that budget, and then it was above 10% for 3 additional years through FY31. In this budget, we again see 2 years out is when we would crack the 10% debt service level in FY29. But slightly unlike last year's budget, we continue to exceed it through FY33. Now, caveats that there's all these conservative assumptions in this, et cetera, but I do think, and this is a point Alderman Savage brought up, it's worth noting that we are seeing a year-over-year slight increase to how often we would be above that policy. All right, here's the fun, sexy part, the capital improvements budget. So I did take a little bit of a different tact on this than last year, in that I tried to just put a little bit more detail about all the different capital projects. So we have 3 categories: the ones that were completed or removed, the ones that were added, and the ones that had significant changes in funding or scope. So the ones that are added tend to be the ones that have the least information because we just don't know as much about them. But I feel like this covers what we need to know in this budget. And if anybody has anything, before we get to the recommendation part of capital, if anyone has anything they'd like to edit within my description of the capital projects, now would be the time to speak up.
I think this is really well done.
Thank you.
I appreciate your effort.
Okay, and then as far as recommendations, they're both somewhat general. Well, one's kind of general and kind of specific, but it's literally about general. And I just tried to capture the sort of mood that I heard from all three of us. Obviously, each one of us are going to have things that we want that might be specific to our wards, that might be specific to our priorities. But as far as what is the top line understanding of the capital budget, there were really two things to me. One was shifting from internal facing upgrades to city government towards external facing improvements for residents that they can actually see. And then to get maybe it's sort of a subcategory or it's separate, but the slightly more specific of that was general roadways, general sidewalks brick, and general striping and marking were all areas that could be increased within that. Are there any suggested changes to these recommendations? Are there any additional recommendations that you guys suggest we include? Are there any ones that these you think we should take away? Alderman Thorpe, do you have any thoughts on, we were talking about this fire station and your conversation with Central Services. Do you think anything about that would be worth including here?
I'm going to be a little specific. I have to tell you, I think these two bullets that you've drafted are the key part to this whole document. Weeks of staff briefs and discussions we've had. It's these two. That's why my reaction about the fire station, we really didn't talk about it,
Yeah.
but we are now. But if we wanted to put it in, we could. But these two, I mean, you brief this tonight. I mean, I think this is the major takeaway from everything we heard.
Yeah.
And it almost seems to me to kind of be my internal test as I have these discussions. And I think it's also a very clear message to the mayor of what the city council was looking for. And what became really apparent from the city staff.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it, you could sum up as, we all agree on Annapolis Works. Part of that is Annapolis Works for its employees, if we want it to work for the residents. But I think what we saw in here was a need to shift it a little bit more towards Annapolis Works for the residents directly. So that was the phrase I was going to use tonight, but there's your spoiler, that's the teaser. Jared's going to watch this later and know exactly what I'm going to say. All right. Do you want to talk about DPW enterprise accounts, Alderman Thorpe?
Sure. I don't think I need to go through the bullets. What I did try to do under the good news is, and the challenges is when the increases were staying the same or going down. It was good news, challenges when they were going the opposite direction. And I thought that ended up to be pretty straightforward and pretty informative. I am concerned, I think we're all concerned about the rate increases, but when you compare them to what we've been doing, sound a little bit like spin, but the good news is the increases aren't increases over last year, in the previous year, so.
The second order derivative is negative, yeah. Boy, that's, I'll put that on a campaign poster.
It could be worse.
They're still increases, but they're not higher than the increase was last year.
Right. I told you, I said the second order derivative is negative. Was I not clear? So that makes perfect sense. As far as recommendations, one thing that we had talked about that I don't see in here was whether it would be possible to smooth the stormwater increase somewhat. If we're talking about doing 15% in this year and 7% in the following years, could we do 10% over every year? And do you have any thoughts on that? Do either of you have any thoughts on including as a recommendation, trying to make them more stable, maybe that's the right word, more flat?
I think that that's a good recommendation. My other question is also, when they were here presenting, they talked about the new calculations for stormwater. Thought we all agreed that that is what we should be implementing, so that should be one of the recommendations
Yeah, and
they
I
set forward.
totally agree. I think there's a comment on that also in here.
Yeah, because it literally says in the slide, we need an amendment to do.
That's an amendment we need to make.
Well, we're lucky we have Ms. Giles here, who would be the right person to ask about this, right? Maybe I'm putting you too much on the spot. It struck me as an environmental thing.
Right,
You would know the
I'm
answer.
tangentially involved with it, but that'd be actually Public Works, so Betsy McEwen would be the appropriate person to ask.
So I think that's definitely a do-out, because is that?
That's an amendment. So one of our recommendations is create an amendment to move forward with the plan set out by Stantec
Got it.
to alter the, how did I write it?
It's the calculation of the impervious surface fee.
Thank you. Thank you. That's exactly it.
So what the slide says is, the staff recommends an amendment for adoption prior to start of FY '27 with an alternative fee structure for non-residential properties. Yeah.
So I just
That's our
copied
amendment.
that. I just copied the word for word there and put it down onto committee recommendations.
So would it make sense to take that action with the budget? So a lot of the recommendations are just going to be listed in the document, and they'll be tracked in the future. This one, we actually have to do before June 30th.
Very bottom of this report is the recommended amendments, so that will go under that one.
Perfect, okay.
All right, but back to my point about flattening. I feel like I lean towards saying we should include that as a recommendation, but that I don't have enough information to say with a lot of certainty that it is the right thing to do. So if either of you feel like, yes, that's definitely the right thing to do, I say we should stick it in there, or maybe if both of you do. And if you are in the same position as me of saying, that sounded like a good idea, but I'm not totally sure, and maybe it has some kind of negative implications, then I think we could just keep moving and not include it.
So I would fully support asking Stantec to run those numbers. The challenge is, it may not balance out. In other words, it might become 14,88888
Right.
rather than 15,777. But even that, it might be even, because when you do the 15, you get them all
Compounded
across the,
interest.
exactly.
That's a good point.
777.
Yeah.
But you're suggesting, like, for instance, last year, they suggested 15 and we did 12. We voted for 12. So if we were to vote for 12, but add subtracting plus the 3 from last year, that would bring FY '28 to 12 as well.
Yeah, perhaps we ask them to run that. What if we did 12? What if we did 14? What if we did 13? What if we did 12? What would it do to the out years?
Yeah, and I think I did actually ask them to do that. I don't think we got a response. Which, that's the difference between having Public Works, so we can just pick up the phone and call, and having an outside consultant. But I'm seeing that as a follow-up. Yeah. I don't see an answer from Stantec on that yet. So I think we should leave it out. And if we can get, well,
Put it
maybe,
in for a recommendation,
Yeah.
and then we can
Sure.
further the amendment once we have the data.
yeah. So let's just call it consider. Consider flattening fee increases. Anybody got a better way?
Averaging?
Spreading,
Oh, Capri had a question.
yeah, Ms. Turner.
Capri Turner, budget analyst. I wanted to clarify if your committee's recommendations are your amendments that you'll be putting forth.
I think they're a little broader. that are amendments. So there might be some where we say very specifically, we want to remove $100,000 from here and put it to here. And then there are other ones that are like, well, there are some that are broad, like we should fund more of general roadways, which that's not really fair to make you come up with an amendment where we're not saying how we're going to fund it. Now, I'll tell you right now, I submitted an amendment yesterday that said, reduce this and split it exactly between these four things. But, so, and what I'm getting at, Ms. Turner, is maybe just we can go through, you and I, the recommendations at the end, and any ones that need to become an amendment, but that for one reason or another, nobody has submitted, we can just make sure those ones specifically get tracked.
Okay.
But yeah, something like consider, well, actually, maybe that's a bad example, but like get more information on the wastewater treatment cost. No, that's not an amendment.
You want to finish your consider
Yeah.
spreading stormwater fee increases?
Increases across.
When he's writing, might be an amendment if the data that Stantec comes through with supports it, but it might not be if it doesn't support it.
Excuse me, Jackie Geld, Acting City Manager. So are you sending a request also to Director Vogel and/or Betsy McEwen to run those scenarios with Stantec?
Well, what I did when we had the Stantec folks here was said very clearly to them, can you please run this scenario for me and get back to us? And as far as I know, they have not gotten back to us. So yeah, I guess I would go to Betsy and make sure that they actually do.
Okay,
I can follow up on it. I can actually follow up on it to make sure that it's done. The only issue is that the deadline to submit the amendments is today. So if we received it after, if we don't get it today, it would have to come after the budget is passed.
Let's submit it as an amendment, and we can always pull it later.
Sure.
Correct.
I'll put that on me. I will make sure that it gets submitted. Let me just. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. I'll just talk with Cabri. Yes, thank you.
She said she would submit those for us. As long as we tell her that's what we want, is the amendment.
Okay, I want to move on to fees and fines, and this is a funny one because there are frequently some things in other departments that really we're recommending fees and fines changes. But, so like the stormwater fee one. But I tried to limit this to only things outside of those four enterprise fund fees. So this isn't talking about trash or water or wastewater or stormwater. But note that there is this commercial recycling annual fee and refuse hauler permit fee. Those are permits rather than what we residents are paying for trash, so I did include those. I don't think there was anything terribly surprising here that we hadn't heard about before. This house barges violation fine, jumping from 500 to 1,000, is interesting. I think that's on marinas, not on individuals. Is that right, Alderman Thorpe? Do you know? Oh, Ms. Gao, do you want to weigh in?
no, I don't know. This is the first I've heard of this, so I'm very interested.
Well, it increases the fine from $500 to $1,000. That's what the proposed budget does on house barges.
That's not our amendment.
Correct.
Did that come from the Harbor Master's office?
But it comes from the budget.
Okay,
It comes from the fines resolution.
okay.
Yeah.
I'll check in with the Harbor Master.
But I assume what that's,
Copy you on that.
I assume what that is for is we have regulations already about house barges. If a marina has more than they're allowed to, then they can get a fine.
Right, there's a fine of $250, and they can go up to $500 per citation, so this is just increasing that. So I need to follow up the Harbor Master, though, to make sure. I don't know where this came from, actually. I don't remember discussing this with them. So whether that should be imposed in the same way that's being imposed right now, enforced, I'm sorry, the way on the operator of the house barge, the owner of the house barge. There had been some discussion at some point that whether the marina owners should also be cited, but right now you cite the owner of the house barge.
Good to know. That seems like something maybe we should change, but we would have to change it in code rather than here.
Alderman Huntley, I just noticed this, and I apologize for
No,
not
go ahead.
noticing before. Was there only one fine change in the budget? I thought there was more than.
I feel like that doesn't seem right to me either, and yet I went through it and could have sworn that I double checked that. Nope, that's fee.
There are no other ones.
Well, that's a great segue into one of our recommendations, which is increasing fines for unlicensed short-term rentals. So Alderman Thorpe, you had a suggestion down here for how to phrase that. And I wrote a different way in my amendments. I think I just hadn't read yours yet, maybe. $500 per advertisement per paper for each ad placement of unlicensed short-term rental. I wrote it as, let's see, what's it, $200 now. I increased it to $500 or the amount per, how did I phrase it? The highest advertised nightly rate on the place, meaning if you're renting a place for $1,000 a night, you could actually get charged $1,000 rather than just $500.
And who's the enforcer on that?
Planning and zoning, so I talked to Director Jakubiec about this, and I don't want to speak for him, but it made sense. The only point I would say to you is I think it needs to be a cost, and the way you just described it would be break even. I'd lose nothing. So I don't have any problem. I like your idea because I think what you're concerned about is the person renting their basement for $300 compared to their 16-bed house for $1,000 or whatever. But I would say 2 times.
Sure.
That 2 times, whatever, if they advertise it for $300, $600 fine. If they advertise it for $1,000, $2,000 fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're advertising something for $1,000 and you get fined $1,000, you're losing money on it. But yeah, sure.
Not if you rent it out.
No, I mean, I think you are because you have costs, right? You're paying a cleaning service, you're paying to restock the toilet, whatever. I'm not trying to quibble too much on it.
Alderman
But,
Huntley,
yeah.
I asked Ms. Letter to come up to opine on whether we can actually do that or not, treat in the fine schedule, do that variable fine.
Did you come up to tell me we can't do it, Ms. Leonard?
It's not a hard no, but generally the legal advice for when you're doing fines is there has to be a rational basis for why you're charging one versus the other. And usually it has to deal with staff time, recouping costs. So you would have to, if you're going to implement this, you would have to indicate why one set that's getting the larger fine, what the basis, what you're basing that larger amount in. And it can't just be on like what they're doing. It has to sort of tie back to like how we're operating, generally speaking.
What you're saying makes perfect sense for fees. But for fines, we charge $70 for a speed camera violation where you're going much faster and less if you're not going as fast.
But that's because the rational basis is much faster is a higher safety risk. So what you have to tie it to some sort of either governmental costs, governmental staff, or public safety. There has to be sort of some sort of rationale, because otherwise you're treating essentially 2 people that are essentially doing the same thing in a different way without sort of a basis for it.
Can I walk down that path a bit? To use a $300 and $1,000 comparison, the impact of an unlicensed $300 basement compared to the impact of a $1,000 16-bed house?
That could be valid, but we need to have sort of that sort of documented on the backside so we know, so that when staff is sort of applying it, they know how to sort of judicially apply it to
And I think that's what Alderman Huntley was going at
Yeah.
earlier, it's different, the size, magnitude of the unlicensed short-term rental.
Yeah, so I mean, that, if you're tying it with, it's a much bigger rental and it's going to have different impacts, that just sort of needs to be sort of specified somewhere, perhaps in the code section, not necessarily in the fee schedule, but in the code section saying that like the fines will be based on X, Y, and Z sort of, just to help, one, people understand why they're getting a bigger fine, and two, help with enforcement so enforcement knows how to sort of apply it.
Otherwise, it may be looked at as vague, ambiguous, unfrivolous, or unsubstantiated type of fine. So you just, that example you gave is a perfect example of the why.
So do we want to, maybe what we can do here is just put in two options and say, where our overarching recommendation is increase fines for unlicensed short-term rentals. And then we can copy and paste your suggestion of $500 per advertisement. And we can put in my suggestion of minimum fine being the highest advertised nightly rental rate.
I'm okay with that, but I think we just got to a good solution.
So we could do both.
Or just do one.
I got you. Do you,
I would do the advertised nightly rate,
Yeah, 2 times the average.
2 times the average nightly rate.
okay,
That's what I would do. Because otherwise, you're spinning your wheels trying to find all of the publications that somebody is advertising on. And what if there's a brand new one? What if there's a secret newsletter that they're advertising on to get there? They're not going through Airbnb or VRBO. They're going through neighborhood rentals, ABC.
Yeah, I guess and I haven't really thought about this, so this is brainstorming. But if I'm going to game it, then I'm going to advertise this 10 times for $10 and 1 time for the real fee. And so I'd like to think that and as we work the short-term rental legislation, that if they advertise it 10 times at different rates, then if planning and zoning should use the most logical rate, which probably is the highest, but
right.
but if we go to average, that kind of violates the keep it simple sailor process, because then the reclame is, well, wait a minute, you're fining me $400, but I advertised it 3 times in these other publications for $250. So I would just keep it. My thought is keep everything as simple as we can from an enforcement standpoint. But
We're having a hard time right now.
right,
I've got
right.
2 in my ward that have been a problem for at least a year, and they're still renting.
So I think our recommendation here is increase baseline fines for unlicensed short-term rentals to $500 per night and set minimum fine equal to twice the highest advertised nightly rate. That work for you guys?
Works for me if it works for the city attorney. In other words, is it clear enough?
It's good. Could you just add a sentence that includes like your thing, that you're basing it on the nightly rental because it's a bigger property that could have more impact on the neighborhood, or something along those lines?
So the way it's written now, somebody could be fined if they rent their short-term rental out without a license. They advertise it for $400 and they rent it out for 3 nights. They could be fined 3 times 15 plus 2 times whatever I said the rate was, $400.
That's not how I understand it. What was thinking is, you're not double counting. You're doing it as, this is the minimum fee. So if, in your example, well, let's say not your example. Let's say the example of somebody who has $1,000 a night one. If they were to rent it out for 3 nights without a license, under current law, they would be fined $600. Under our upping it to $500 a night law, they would be charged $1,500, right? 3 nights times $500. By adding in this third one, or this second part, setting the minimum fine, we're making it so that they are charged $3,000. What we're doing is just saying, if you're advertising for more than $500 a night, your fine is increasing. Is that?
I would be fine with that because it gets a little too high if you do both.
Yeah.
But then, should it say or among the two options, or, and then at the end, whichever is higher?
It would be the higher of
Yeah,
A versus B.
yeah. Because if you did the 3 nights plus twice the advertising, then you start to cut into their mortgage.
Yeah. And I think that's how we would phrase it in the actual fine, is we typically say this, the higher of the two is how it's typically written, right? Cool. Okay. Moving on to, thank you, Ms. Leonard. I think we're good on that topic. I
You
appreciate
can just
you.
stay there if you'd like.
You can come up and get a cookie if you need.
Might get a cookie.
Yeah, go ahead.
He's getting a cookie. He's getting a cookie.
Okay, increasing short-term rental registrations for non-owner occupied while lowering them relative to proposed for owner occupied. So I'll tell you guys how I submitted this as a budget amendment with not knowing what exactly the numbers should be. I said, bump it up to 700 for non-owner occupied and bump it down to 600 for owner occupied. I think that makes sense. If we actually have 5 times as many non-owner occupieds as we have owner occupieds, that would result in us making more money than frankly we should on these. But without knowing the exact numbers from Chris of the breakdown between owner occupied and non-owner occupied, I thought it made sense to just say, what we're trying to get at here is split the two.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So are you guys okay with this as it's written?
Yeah, and I'm fine with the number right now. And maybe we actually even want to include it as a recommendation. I would like to ensure, and to the city attorney's point, that fees can only cover the cost to the city, but I would like to ensure that we cover all the costs.
Absolutely.
And this is one where I think we need to go the extra couple steps to ensure that everybody's costs who have anything to do with this, and gasoline to inspect them, and I mean, that we really, with the emotion that's involved with the residents, I think we need to capture every dime so that the residents writ large aren't paying for this program.
So I'm happy to add in a amendment because I think we're all in agreement on that. And so I'm phrasing it as ensure what you're just saying, which is ensure that STR fees cover full program costs. All right, the next one that I had put in here was increasing fees for recreation and parks and for the harbor master for non-residents while lowering for residents. Now, Alderman Thorpe let me know that the harbor master tells us apparently we can't do that for non-residents. Do you know anything about that, Ms. Child?
Yes.
And I'll just give you its background.
Yep.
I started this quest with the Truxton boat ramp, as that was a place that we know lots of non-residents use, and it make sense to just bifurcate those fees. So you let me know what you know.
So the boat ramp, we do, DNR's rules do apply to that, and they do not allow us to charge differently. So and then we applied for a fee increase and they have approved that. So we can do the increase, we just can't apply it differently between the residents and the non-residents.
And so, okay, Truxton Park can't do it. But what about other examples within the harbor master's office? Would you say, generally speaking, they're all falling under these DNR rules? Because we got in program, this is because of program open space money, right? That's,
No, I don't believe it's program, it was open space money.
Is
Do you know if
this
it is, Ashley?
law or DNR's rules?
No, it's
No.
tied with, so I don't believe it's program open space, although program open space
watershed.
does have that. But a lot of the DNR grants, of which there's a variety, basically say that if you're taking state monies, that you have to sort of apply it equally, or you have to get their approval, written approval in advance for a change. I don't have a full, I know there is a lot of DNR money of various types on, I would say, a substantial number of our water-related facilities. I don't know if they're all, but DNR did send me once a comprehensive list, and it's a lot.
Yeah, for the boat ramp, there's one, and we have to treat residents and non-residents the same. For watershed improvement program grants, which we do our street end improvements with those, our bulkheads, our floating docks, et cetera. DNR, those are DNR again, grant related. I believe that is across the board same, well, there's no fees associated with those anyway, but we have city rules like how long you can dock, what size, but those are city rules applied to that. So there's no fees related to that. There's just citations, which are not different based on who's docking, who's pulled up their dinghy there. And then we have mooring balls, which are DNR again. Some of the fields are DNR grant funded. Same fees there for everybody. But then the city operates its dinghy, our mooring balls that the city owns that we put out annual leases on, and we do charge differently for that because those aren't DNR funded mooring balls, they're city mooring balls, and therefore we can make up our own rules.
got it.
So I'm confused. Can the two of you tell us, specifically concerning the Truxton Park ramp, what prevents us from charging out of Annapolis different rates?
That one is definitely a DNR grant. Plus, I think there's program open space. I think, yeah, Truxton has, I believe, both program open space plus additional DNR grant.
So we have used those two funds for Truxton Park ramp.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Truxton Park, rather, does for sure has a lot of DNR funding tied to it.
Unable to charge differently.
So I'm going to delete Harbor Master out of this. Do we think this is still something that's viable for rec and parks?
Yes.
Okay.
But I think you also there was a fee increase for our mooring balls, but and which again, the city can do that. We can increase our mooring ball rate. We're not proposing that it be different for county residents or city residents, but the proposal was to go from $35 to $40, which is still, I think, below market rate. I don't think anyone will blink at that. Those fees have not been increased in 10 years.
Wow.
So we're losing revenue there, and they do generate quite a bit of revenue. They can be turned over 3 times in a day. So it's either $35 3 times or $40 3 times. And with City Dock not being able to have as many people docking there because of construction, we're looking at the mooring balls to generate the revenue from our boating operations.
What would stop us from making the mooring balls for FY '27 45 versus 35, just as a way to make up for not having dockage at City Dock for the season?
I don't think anything prevents us. I think it's a question of the recommendation of the staff.
Yeah, so nothing prevents you from doing that, to making it whatever, $100 a night if you had use, if you wanted to. But we think, and it's been 10 years, it probably should be $45, even $50. But as far as, some people that come in are residents that tie up. I've done it. So I'm not a resident, but from the local area, you know what I mean? So I think the harbor master thought just doing $5 is not going to cause any heartburn to anybody, but if we went up $10, it might. But that's up, you can make it whatever you want.
I would like to agree to give her top cover and make it 45. go do what you're saying, rather than $5, $10. I don't think $45 for a mooring ball is prohibitive.
Amendment we could put forward?
Yeah.
We agreed?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it per se, but I'm not terribly inclined to put it in our recommendation at this point unless we have a particular need to do it. Just because I'm a little wary of, we just came up with this idea just now. And also, I'm not sure what we would spend the money on. But that's just me being wary more than me saying absolutely no.
I would say that I would support it because I would not support lowering the resident park and rec fee. I do support increasing the non-resident park and rec fee, but I believe that park and rec fee is all told. If we had more revenue, there could possibly be more programming, which goes back up to that aftercare scenario that is one of the priorities of the council.
So, okay. I'm going to delete this while lowering for residents from the Rec and Parks one. I'm fine with getting rid of that. You guys both really want to bump up the mooring ball fee. And I did have in other thoughts that we should better adjust for inflation. So if you guys both want to do that, I am fine with increasing daily,
City-owned.
yeah, fee on city-owned. All right. Everybody all right with these green recommendations? So I'm going to move on to these couple from Alderman Thorpe. Okay, so we can strike this first one about rental unit
I'm
license.
sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
I think if the harbor master was here, she would ask you not city-owned. She would ask you to use her.
I agree, Alderman Thorpe. I think that people just like, what is the city-owned and what is not at that point? So, and then there's jockeying for what they think is city-owned. We just consider them all city mooring balls, so I just would say mooring balls.
Go with me.
And then if someone decided, if we found, the rare situation where someone actually could install their own mooring ball, then that would be outside of this.
Build daily fee. Okay. Failure to maintain a rental unit license, we covered that, so I'm just going to go ahead and delete this chunk here. And then, yeah, I got to tell you, Alderman Thorpe, I'm not a fan of decreasing the red curb ones. So I mean, we could do something like we have in another place where we put in here that it's, you guys feel strongly enough that you want to put it in here, and we'll just note that I'm dissenting. But I think that's better as an individual amendment, if you're okay with that.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Do you have it saved before yeah.
Alderman, I'm sorry, Huntley, I just had a reply from the harbor master, and she said that the proposal does include the marina owner, so a fine against both the owner of the offending house barge and the marina owner. The rationale being that the marina owner allowed them to be there without a permit.
Yeah, it makes total sense to me that the marina owner should be responsible. So, okay, thank you for explaining
Yeah,
that.
but the
You're saying both.
Sorry?
You're saying they both get fined on currently?
That's what the current proposal is. Currently, the citation only goes to the owner of the house barge. The proposal is the owner of the house barge and the marina owner.
How would that happen if, that would require a code change?
Yes, it would.
Okay. Where is that code change happening?
It's not happening right now. There need to be an amendment for that.
Got it, okay. Well, it wouldn't even be a budget amendment. It would be, we'd have to do something
Code
separate.
amendment, yes.
Yeah, okay, cool. All right, that's fine. Did you have this copied before I knock it out of here?
Thank you.
Yep. Parking buses, I think that's a great idea. I know it's a little bit specific to Eastport maybe, but I see no reason why the committee couldn't endorse this.
I I think there's other wards that's, I think Keanu's talking about it too.
Yeah.
So I think this is, I mean, and the thing is, they just sit there with their motors running,
Yeah.
and for $100, it's worth it for them.
Worth it for the AC.
I
Yeah.
have had residents, when I talk to them about this, say it should be 500, because the bus driver's not going to pay for it, the company's going to pay for it. So the whole goal of increasing this fine is to get the word out that don't park your bus and hang out on the streets of Annapolis.
Totally. So I'm happy to include this in here.
Yes. Way back when I worked for Watermark Cruises, as a salesperson, we were told to very explicitly tell groups coming into the city the buses were not allowed to remain on city streets while their kids were, or groups were on tour, that they had to go to the mall or to the park and ride on Riva. And that was actually written into our lease agreement, so I think it's just faltered over the years.
Yeah.
Alderman Thorpe, do you want to, I'm totally supportive of this next one. Do you want to include it here, or would you rather lump it in with your other one about red curbs?
If you all agree, I think it should be here.
Okay. Good
I
with me.
agree.
Yeah, I think we should delete the part where it says $200, so, right? Or, just to be consistent, we should delete that.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
whatever the number is,
yeah.
it should be the same. You're right.
Yeah.
Alderman Huntley, I have one more clarification from Betsy McEwen.
Oh,
Getting
you're on
quick
it
responses.
today. My goodness.
She said that she doesn't know if 10% would be feasible unless Stantec runs the numbers. So we'll have to do that, run them under different scenarios, whatever you want, accommodation you want done. So she'll just
Yeah.
follow, you can follow up with her on that.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I'll check with Betsy about it. Like I said, it was, we've had such phenomenal track record of our department directors responding that in one of these hearings, when I say, you'll get back to me on that, right? I didn't even think twice to make sure that they actually had, because everybody within the city had done such a great job. Okay,
Alderman Huntley, just to finish here.
Yeah, yeah.
It says currently is $100. I agree with not putting a final number, but which is different than the number for red curbs. Just to be clarified
Yes.
for anybody who reads this.
sure.
Why are we
which
saying
is
this?
Different than parking on. All right. I have a note here that actually I just need to check on this. So we don't really need to discuss it. It's a factual question of whether that 2.6% increase is still true. I think that was just a holdover from last year, but I'll check it. So moving on to the mayor's office. Alderman Thorpe, anything you want to highlight for us from this mayor's office part?
I don't think so. Back to, maybe focus on the recommendations, since we put some more weight on them. The recommendations review what committee meetings are available in person, online, and determine the value of making. So I went and looked on the YouTube channel as to how many people have watched some of the meetings, and there's a bunch of them that only 5 people have ever watched. And having heard the team talk about the strain that it puts on us, as I wrote here, I'm wondering if that's a continuation of COVID, and maybe we need to not lean so far into that and give it a try.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
Yeah, I'm 50-50. Prior to COVID, many of the committees and commissions were not broadcast. You had a meeting. Since COVID, due to many of the meetings being broadcast, new things have come to light for us to know about. I don't have to point out any one, but
Yeah.
there are a few that, where before it was never recorded. And I know that administration is working on revamping some of the commission rules and regulations and asking that those commissions go to at least quarterly in-person meetings, because it's really important. I think you lose some of the effectiveness of a committee if it's only on Zoom.
Yeah, and I think it's a case by case, and now with Laura Richards focused on this as she is and all that, there might be a case where the department director it's inconvenient for them to get here for a personal, in-person meeting. So the decision is made to put it online. So I think it's case by case, but I think right now the default is we just broadcast them all.
Right. I do think it needs to be studied and take a closer look at it.
Yeah, I don't really need to add.
Bullet-
I did, oh, go on.
I was going to go to the second bullet unless you want to say
Yeah,
it first.
nope. I had a question
So the
about
second
three.
bullet, I thought I was trying to capture the concern that the city council had expressed with the deputy chief of staff. I think that almost doesn't need to be said, but it's worth saying in our council report, finance committee report. Same thing with the ombudsman. And then the fourth one might be a little personal on my part. I don't think it's well defined, and I submitted a request back in November, and I don't have an answer yet. So the council went to great effort to put $3,000 per council member, and there's no guidelines for it.
Sense?
I agree with all of them.
Yeah, if I was going to quibble, I agree with the ombudsman thing, but I'm not sure it's super relevant to the budget, but I probably shouldn't even say anything because I don't need to quibble. I defer to you.
No, but I think that's a great point, that we ought to make sure we stay to the budget. My point is we funded the position.
Yeah. All right, Office of Law is not terribly interesting. No offense, Ashley. It's like the finance department. You don't want them to be interesting. When they're interesting, that's when we have problems. But I did update the stats that Carrie shared because I thought they were interesting. I noted the increase in budget, like why the salaries and benefits were over budget, even though we have significant vacancies. I also called out that the county's management of municipal elections is getting expensive. I think that's a place that if you just look in the budget, you'd see the elections area is going up. And it's important to recognize why. It's because the county is charging us more. And at some point, it probably just becomes more cost effective to run them ourselves. So I wanted to highlight that. But the only recommendation is updating the fee schedule for the hourly rate. And that's something, for the hourly rate of an MPIA request. And that's something that is already in the, well, actually, maybe Ms. Leonard can jump in here. In the proposed fee schedule, it bumps it up from, I think, $30 to $35 an hour. And what we heard from Carrie in the Office of Law was we want to make sure we're capturing the full cost of people doing that. And at the risk of very much putting you on the spot, I think that we're probably talking about more than $35 for an hour of your time. And so I want to make sure, what I'm trying to understand is, do we need to change it further from what is proposed to get to that goal of fully recovering the time?
I haven't looked at recently. I'd like to look at other jurisdictions. I know a couple of years ago when we looked, they were basing it less on a flat rate and more on who was actually doing it. Keeping in mind they had limitations in if you don't need a lawyer to do it, then you don't have the lawyer do it kind of thing. But other jurisdictions, I believe, the last time I checked, do sort of acknowledge that there's different levels of because we're talking about the search and preparation fee is what we're talking about. There's a different level between how much time IT needs to pull emails, how much time is needed for a lawyer to legally review and redact things versus someone just gathering, basic low-level documents. There's a different workload on that. And other jurisdictions, I believe, reflect sort of if you need a higher paying individual to do something, that's reflected in the fee cost.
So yeah, that is our goal. And I think the way the recommendation is written is clear on what our goal is. I want to understand whether what's in the proposed fee increases covers that.
35 is, the reality is the Office of Law does most of the heavy lifting on it, so 35 is better than 30, but it's still not. I don't actually know off the top of my head what my hourly rate is, but I don't believe that's close to it.
Yeah. So I think it is worthwhile to include this as a recommendation and work with the city attorney and the budget team on what would covering the cost actually be? So, anybody want to talk about that more?
Yeah, the only thing I would point out is of a lot of these recommendations, I think this is one that we ought to really get a number for to go forward.
I mean, I would want to look at what other jurisdictions in
Yeah.
the state are doing before I would make a solid
Yeah.
number recommendation. And then some of it is, I think some of them, they actually just put, it's like the rate up. So instead of putting a dollar amount in, and it's a prorated amount of like the hourly rate. And so then the staff person would have to look up their hourly rate and do the proper proration.
Yeah. But are you saying that you want to be able to write in here $42 or 43?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, I think this is a philosophical question too. I like exactly what you're saying is what do other jurisdictions do? We don't want to make it so expensive that nobody requests information. But on the other hand, if it costs $60 to do it or whatever, we ought to ensure that we're charging the right amount. So what I'm saying is if it's possible, we ought to put a number in here, not by tonight.
Okay,
But,
that was all I was getting at. Yeah.
no, not by tonight.
You said into this, I'm totally fine with it, something along, can charge the actual hourly rate of the employee fulfilling the MPIA request, parenthesis, encoded in the fee schedule. Because what you're saying is you don't want to write down actual hourly rate. You want to write down $45 an hour or $60 an hour, and that's totally fine with me.
Or whatever. I mean, if it's a range, if it's a range, because sometimes when you submit a request, I've seen answer that come back that says, yes, we will do that. According to our rules, the rate could be between $50, $20, and $100. This is going to cost $80 or whatever. So whatever, I don't want to drive the way you do it, but if possible, this would be a good one just to wrap up in the next couple days so that we actually put it here. And it might be exactly what you've got. All right.
I made myself a note.
Cool. Okay, let's keep moving because we got a half hour left and we do have kind of a hard stop in that we got to get this formatted and pretty. So on to city manager.
Okay, all good news. The challenge could be made a recommendation, but I wanted to make sure that we noted the amount of effort being put by the onboarding that's going on of senior staff. We've already started to see project and process improvement initiatives, and I wanted to make sure we note that with the new city manager, it brings the deputy city manager back to the business of performance metrics. I didn't think that was a recommendation because she's already tracking it.
Yeah, but it's a great point to make though.
Resiliency and sustainability commented that City Doc is in progress and on track. And I took to heart the brief that completed the climate action plan and the greenhouse gas emissions. Challenges, I think they really haven't changed a lot. And committee recommendations provide fiscal year 27 performance measures relative to stated benchmarks, and provide city council updates on the leaf blower rebates and enforcement. We talked about doing a city council work session.
Okay, all right. And you got my 20% raise?
What's that?
It took Harry a minute.
I didn't hear it, which might have been good. I don't know.
She wanted to make sure we included a recommendation for her raise.
Well, we had talked about 60%. What was your recommendation?
Yeah, I like that one, Frank, yeah. I forgot.
All right, Harbor Master, any questions on that one, Harbor Master? Harbor Master, real kudos for the amount of work they've done for their flexibility with everything that's going on City Dock, and not to be forgotten, all the work they did on house barges. Challenges, continue to work with the City Dock effort, as well as ongoing changes in the mooring and docking. And also the working in a temporary office space, and same thing, really zeroing in on creating goals and objectives for the performance measures.
I wanted to note for resilience and sustainability, if it's something that you're not aware of, our highest priority for the city manager's office in general is making sure that we have money allocated to the second environmental program manager that we hired in the past year. That was a civil service position, which he intended to make a permanent position. But last year when we hired that person, that money came from unused salary from the city manager's office. So it definitely needs to be something that we include in our permanent salaries. Just highlighting that for you.
Yeah, generally, our recommendations are only if we're suggesting we do something different than what's in the mayor's proposed budget.
okay.
So that is in the proposed budget.
It is in the
right?
proposed. I just wanted to make sure you're aware of that because the funding source, it was confusing to some people at first, some of the members of council.
Okay,
Great, totally support of those recommendations.
Yeah, definitely. Community services,
You're up.
good news, rebranding, increase in training, challenges. Still, there's a very high demand for rental and utility assistance, but the funding is projected to decrease. Grant funding decreased by 10%, even though requests were higher than in FY26. And they talked about a challenge of repeat clients and trying to find solutions to help people better understand financial literacy and opportunities for growth versus coming back to the city time and time again. I said our recommendations were, again, in that repeat client, solving that, partnering with nonprofits to offer education and financial literacy, create a process to make the housing assistance funds last longer, which they were already working on. In the budget, we are budgeted to bring them a new case management software package.
I just wanted to actually clarify that one. Is the case management software already in the mayor's budget, or are you suggesting? Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
Okay.
that was one of the positives that they said that the enhancement that they had received.
So can we just make that clear in the recommendation? It's something like, because I
Agree
did
with-
just say to Ms. Kyle just now, we don't put it in there unless it's
Yeah.
not.
Yeah. Agree with the implementation of the case management software. How's that?
Yep.
And then my last recommendation was outside of the budget process, or somebody's recommendation, which I agree with, rewrite the community grants code to focus more on funding, catalytic funding.
Yeah, that was my, that phrase catalytic is, you guys cool with what I mean by that? You understand what I'm saying there? That we give them money so that they don't need our money in the future?
I think we should spell that out.
Okay.
I think it should be focused more on self-sustaining, becoming self-sustaining.
Yeah, focus more on funding that can enhance self-sustainability
Yeah, perfect.
or support self-sustain. All right, I'm great with all of those. Alderman Thorpe, you want to talk about central services?
Sure. Super impressed with Central Services brief and the amount of work that they've gone to. I do think they are underestimating the improvements in both savings, productivity, and efficiency. And I think time will tell as they do that. I think he's working through the personnel changes. And I spoke to the director, then I spoke to the city manager. They're not necessarily in sync. So I think there's a couple different chess moves that he's got to figure out. I'm not, so on the risk manager position, he was able to explain to me a lot better what the risk manager was. So for instance, he explained maintenance had not been done on air conditioners for many years, and there was nobody looking at what the risk was to that. So it's across the board, facilities-wise, as to where we should be doing preventive maintenance and things like that. So I definitely see the need for that risk manager capability, as well as I think Ms. Buckland was pointing out, fire drills and things like that. So I would not, I see the addition of the third one. I think we need to hear what the city manager and the mayor want to do with this department, because I think it's all over the map right now. And so I would hesitate to move the chess pieces for them, because I think there's, seven chess pieces. The original budget funds 3. He said he would give up those 3 for another 2. And then the risk manager, or the real estate position is a consultant, and he's saying, I'd rather have the risk manager, whatever. So there's a whole bunch of moves. It's on my mind, and talking to the city manager, they're putting a lot of effort into this as to figure out where the chess pieces should be. So I don't have a position on them, and I think they're sorting it out. So my take is they're the best qualified to say that.
Yeah, I'm pretty darn opposed to the idea of having that risk manager. I mean, every justification that we've heard for it feels like it can't possibly, the benefit that they are suggesting will come from it can't be anywhere near the cost for it. Like fire drills, I mean, of course we should do fire drills. Absolutely, no two ways about it. Do we need a $135,000 a year position to do fire drills? No, I don't think so. I feel pretty confident we do not. And yet I see all the time how not having a real estate manager harms our ability to negotiate leases. It harms our ability to get right-of-way for city projects. And because it means more work falls to, you're sitting right here, so I'll point to you, Ms. Leonard, it means that things that wouldn't even be under this position's purview, like a guy trying to negotiate an easement on his land, it ends up taking longer. So I'm actually would go even further than what I think Alderman O'Neill wrote here and say we should totally get rid of the risk manager position, fund a full-on real estate manager. There's a slight difference in cost there, which I think we can offset with. It happens to be almost exactly the cost difference between the deputy chief of staff as originally proposed and what that'll actually cost. And then that frees up $100,000 of one-time money for something else. So my recommendation would be get rid of it entirely. We could either say we all three have different positions on this, and so we shouldn't include it. Or we could say, I'm over here, Alderman Thorpe's over here, Alderman O'Neill's kind of in the middle of us. Perhaps we take her position.
Yeah, so I literally am not, having talked to him at length about this and then talked to Ms. Buckland about it, I don't feel that, it's more complicated than a one or the other. And they're looking at a plan in central services to, I think, propose to the city council a change that will actually overall save revenue, taking into account adding, subtracting billets, as well as moving the real estate manager from, so
So should our amendment be that we don't support the risk management position?
City government is already too risk averse. I'm all over that.
Well, so, yeah, but so that's the problem, and I talked to Matt about this, the title of the job. There's a lot of things that aren't getting done, and I'm not arguing for or against it, because I don't have my notes in front of me. I mean, he went through this great analysis, and then Ms. Buckland went through they are wired on this. So my concern is for me to weigh in on either one of just these two when they actually fit into a bigger chessboard. That's my concern. So
I understand that, but in the interest of time and the fact that our budget amendments are due today, And we could drop an amendment, but we could not necessarily add an amendment until after the budget has gone through. If we support not
Well,
funding that position,
Yeah.
Right?
Just to your point, I submitted an amendment on that from me. So I don't think we're under necessarily the constraint of we can't do it, because you can always just vote for mine. But, yeah, but I mean, on the merits, I agree with you that we should just include as a recommendation to remove the risk manager position.
I think that we're safe in that, because that way the budget doesn't go forward with it there, and we are able to talk about a reallocation of.
Yeah. I think it's not going to matter in the end. So I think if you two want to express your concern about it through this, I'm fine with that. And I'm fine with it because I know there's all this work that they're going to, that the mayor's office, city manager's going to come to us with a, hey, here's the entire, it's going to,
There's going to be an amendment
right,
to the proposed budget.
right, because what's in the budget now, that won't stand. They don't want it to stand.
Right.
Yeah.
So I believe if we take the position that our recommendation is we remove the risk manager position from the budget at this time, it should be our recommendation.
Yeah. Standalone is that, I think that's a great discussion point.
Move risk manager position. Do you want to include and create real estate manager position? That would be my preference, but if you don't feel strongly.
If you believe that, I would split it into two. Don't connect.
Sure, that's fine with me.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Can I clarify which position you're speaking of? Are you talking about the risk management specialist position?
Yes, the
Okay.
new one. Yep, thank you for clarifying that.
Thank you.
Risk manager,
Management specialist.
management specialist. Thank you. And create real estate manager position, specialist. Alderman Thorpe, do you want me to note on here abstain for you? Okay.
And I don't know why it's colored brown on there when it was supposed to be purple.
It's because you were suggesting in purple. So it's, yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, human resources, they will tell you they did not request any enhancements, and so I did not have any recommendations for them. That department has been working through having an acting director. I think it's not really the time to make significant changes. Alderman Thorpe suggested adding the city's onboarding process needs to be significantly improved. I agree with that assessment. I suggested having a little bit more clear, like phrasing this more around what's wrong. So if you have something you can come up with off the top of your head, that'd be great, about the onboarding process. Like if we can put it more in the form of, the challenge is.
Didn't I say something?
So
Oh, that's great. Yeah, so how about needs a defined process? We could say the city's onboarding process needs a defined process and timeline?
To be clearly defined and include a timeline.
And I would open up the idea of changing it from a challenge to a recommendation. I think the most important time in employee time at an organization, we need to knock their socks off right from the start. And if it goes to the criteria of city council work session, I'd be honest with you, I'd be game for asking the new HR person to, you got 3 months to come tell us what.
Yeah. No, as it was written, I felt like it was not written as a challenge, but I'm perfectly happy with just moving it down to recommendations and having that covered. ITS, I actually did rewrite a lot of their section here, so I just want to remember if there's anything I put. No, I don't think there's anything listed that you wouldn't have seen otherwise. Oh, I did put in this point about having not yet developed the internal AI usage policy, which I find. And then as for recommendations, so this third one actually is maybe the only one we should talk about. This is something I want, but I'm perfectly happy with it just being a Harry amendment rather than a finance committee amendment. Do you two feel like you agree with this and it's worthwhile to include as a finance committee amendment?
I would say that as a recommendation in our lexicon and structure, it won't have a lot of meat to it unless I would support an amendment that tasks the staff to, I don't think we want to write it this way, but to spend $10,000, but to put $10,000 into looking into AI systems. I mean, our reaction to Mr. Jakubiec, when all three of us wanted to jump off of the dais here and hug him, I think if the city council wants to do this, we should put skin in the game. So I would take it a step farther and make that like an amendment.
Yeah, and I did submit an amendment for that. What I'm suggesting, yes, I submitted an amendment for that. And what I was saying is just like, is this niche enough that it should just be my amendment? Or do you guys both support it and want to include it in the finance committee's recommendations?
You've already submitted it, correct?
Yeah.
So then it would be a double submission.
Yeah. So I'm fine with it not being, let's not go to this extra work.
Okay, I'm just going to delete it. Cool.
Is there any chance, Alderman Huntley, that you and I could convince Alderwoman O'Neill to support actually, I'm looking at Alderwoman O'Neill. Is there any chance we could get you to support that? In my discussions with the Director of Central Services, I think this is more of a mindset than anything else. We heard over and over from every department that their budgets were cut because of consolidation. And I fully understand that one of the things that was consolidated was like the BG&E bill, which we're not going to get any volume discount. But
I thought we were. I thought that was like the example that Director Flinner said they were already negotiating. It doesn't matter.
yeah,
Sorry.
so my point being though is I think the residents are looking for us to catch savings, and I haven't had a chance to watch it, but I'm getting the link of when this was proposed. And I just think we need a mindset that we challenge the staff that part of this consolidation is saving money. Now, I fully agree that if the city manager and the mayor come to us and say, we actually are increasing by 2% because by consolidating, we found that we needed 3 other software items to spend, that I would support that. But I think from a mindset, leadership, management decision, I think we need to drive them to saving money.
Philosophically, I think that that's what they're doing by moving it to central services. I don't think that we can realize the savings until we have actual data to prove that. And I don't think we'll have actual data to prove that for at least 6 to 8 months into the new budget. So that's where I didn't want to pretend we had these savings that then we have to do a fund transfer to cover the cost of what we thought was going to be saved, or whatever. If we end up saving money and we have money that we could put towards another opportunity later on in the year, I think that that's great, and I think that's a discussion for later. But I don't think you can start a budget with hopefully we're saving. That's why I dissent.
Okay. Well, I give on the dissent. Keep it in there.
Okay. Just keep it moving. And then, but actually to that point, I do think we should have this recommendation be aligned between ITS and central services, because we're doing essentially the same thing, which in central services, we wrote determine significant cost savings that result from creation of this department. But doing the same thing here. So my suggestion is just that they be parallel.
Yeah, I think the difference is my level of confidence that the city's going to come forward with a cut in central services is pretty high. I haven't dug as deep into IT. So what I'm sitting here thinking is again, what action does this, with the dissent, I'm thinking that there is no finance committee amendment at 1% because we're not unanimous. So maybe I should submit an amendment to reduce expenses by 1%, by X number of dollars. So I do think a little bit it's apples and oranges, because we don't, to Alderwoman O'Neill's point, we don't know that, other than the conversation we had, the philosophical discussion when the director of ITS was here. So,
Okay, that's fine. If you see a distinction, so we're deleting both. Sorry, did I mess you up?
yeah, hit Control Z so I can copy and paste it.
There you go. And Alderman Thorpe, we
Wait,
should,
I think you should keep it in here that Alderwoman O'Neill dissents,
okay.
right? Is that, I don't know, is that our lexicon, or do we need unanimous?
No, we've had, it is, my approach is ultimately we are governed by majority. And so if there's something that we think is important, that there's a majority but not unanimity on, we should include it. And I've taken that position in the past, even when I was the one in the minority. But it's always nice when we can have consensus. So I think it's worthwhile to include. All right, Finance Department has some challenges due to relatively low staff. My recommendations, so first of all, Alderman Thorpe put in this one about put processes in place to complete ACFR. Totally support that. Makes great sense. It'll make our budget easier next year. I think also everyone will agree about ensuring that debt service for FY27 matches bonds that are actually issued. Just because we had lower debt service than we thought we would in 26, we want to try and tighten up all those numbers. The one that needs more explaining is this increased contingency fund funds 1. So first of all, I just don't think the contingency funds that are in this budget are adequate. We have about $300,000 in the contingency fund. We overspent on snow removal by 60% more than that. Their $300,000 for something coming up just strikes me as laughably low. Now, it's hard to make the argument of, boy, I'm going to cut something I really care about and put money into, well, what if something bad happens? Like, that's a tough decision for anybody to make. So ultimately, this is going to hinge on where do we get the funding from. I do think, and I submitted an amendment on this that I've been working on with the finance director, I do think that we should calculate vacancy savings for more departments than just police and planning and zoning. And so that would be a very straightforward way to increase the contingency funds. That was a long explanation, but I hope you guys can agree that it is worthwhile to increase the contingency funds, recognizing that that of course requires some pay for.
So I totally agree with you philosophically. My concern is to get from May 11th to a budget. I'm concerned that, one, we can do it, and two, we can do it with the right amount of granularity in the effort. I totally agreed with the conversation this morning in the Financial Advisory Commission that you led.
Oh, right.
And so the way I look at it, I really commend the Finance Department for getting us to this part of the process of the budget. And I think there's a desire in the Finance Department to do exactly what you're saying, but I think it's a significant change to the way the city's been doing budgets for a long time. And so with a new finance director, with a new mayor, with a new city manager, we budget right now very conservatively, and then we use the money next year that we saved. I know I agree with your sentiment this morning at the Financial Advisory Commission, but I'm just worried if we make this shift in the next 30 days, what we end up doing to the Finance Department. So
So let me be clear. The recommendation is not put vacancy savings in. I purposefully didn't include that as the Finance Committee recommendation. because
That's what that was my worry, is that what
Yeah.
you were doing?
yeah, no, I totally think it's a good idea. I do think we can do it in the next month, but I intentionally did not write that as the committee's recommendation because I figured we did not have unanimity on it. What this recommendation is just saying $300,000 is too low for contingency funds. And if we start putting in vacancy savings, it's definitely too low.
Yeah, but so what I'm saying is, I agree with you that the $300,000 is too low, especially when your point about snow and other things. But it's not too low because of how conservatively we budget, and over years, we have significant, like millions of dollars. And I think the discussion that you had this morning about looking at that whole thing, that I think contingency should be higher and we should be budgeting more accurately. But I just don't think we can get there in the next 30 days. So I would be, to me, it would seem if we increase the contingency without becoming less conservative across the board, we're just increasing the excess that we're going to have a year from now. Whereas I think your sentiment this morning and today is that the Financial Advisory Commission, and now talking at the Finance Committee, we'd like to become less conservative on our budgeting, i.e. more, maybe better say, more accurate in our
More
budgeting.
precise even.
Which would cause us to require ourselves to have a higher contingency because we're taking more risk. So that's a long way of saying that I don't know that I want to put more money into contingency to raise that, but I definitely think the sentiment is there across the board, and we have the people coming into place to do it when the new finance director's identified and all that, to, quite frankly, I think not only is it a city council work session, but I think we should direct as a city council to budget more accurately.
Yeah, I mean, it's a question of how soon should we do this? I feel like we can very straightforwardly come up with a metric. I feel like I have come up with a metric for how we can calculate this. And I hear your concern that we have a month left, but I also think we got a whole month. We can figure it out to say there's a relatively straightforward way to do this. Of we're going to look at the average for your budgets and salaries over the past however many years. We're going to throw out any outliers, and then we're going to apply that discount rate to your budget and salaries now.
Can I respectfully point something out?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
We have a new HR director coming in who's going to drive the hiring process a lot harder. We have a new city manager coming in. So I'm not sure that the data based on the last 2, 3 years, 4 years gives me the confidence to use that data to budget going forward. And we've had a significant amount of turnover. And so I agree with you philosophically, except for I just think that there's a different, I'm guessing a year from now, we're going to have one senior vacancy. Maybe 0, but.
Right, but I
know,
think
so-
the point of this is not to address senior vacancies. The point of this is to say if Public Works has 60 general fund employees, on average, how many of them are we missing in a year? It's not, is there a vacancy at the top? And what you're saying could still apply, but I think there's, what we're trying to do here is get at the savings that don't have a lot of variation.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you,
Yeah.
but my point is I've had directors express frustration to me that they did all the paperwork, ready for the hiring, month after month after month. It never happened. And my point is I think that's going to change.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, I think I'd like the city council I'd like the finance director to report on a monthly basis the number of vacancies we have. I think that's a huge, all members of city council have in some way, shape, or form mentioned why hasn't this person been hired that the city council said to hire? And I think that's an important metric, and I think I think we're going to drive to it. Anyway, that,
So let me suggest a different way of phrasing this. And you guys tell me, well, we haven't heard from you at all, Alderman O'Neill. You have thoughts on how I've written this so far, before I propose something different?
You're going to propose something different? I believe that the contingency fund should be higher. We should have the expectation of, if we were over by 1,000 this year, then we will equally be by that much, because they did not increase the storm removal budget in DPW. That's just one example. So if
Well, now I don't want to change it. It sounds like you just agreed with me. No, what I was going to suggest that I think could satisfy all parties is saying this as increase the precision of our budgeting process, which would likely require increasing contingency funds.
love that.
Is that okay?
I mean, just to be clear, one of the reasons I love it, it doesn't do anything in the next 30 days.
I mean, I think it
If they could
could.
find it.
you need an amendment
Yeah.
that increases the contingency fund by X number.
Okay, and you leave it up to them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Increase the precision of our budgeting process, which would require an. All right, we are at time, but I think we need to get this done. So, Alderman O'Neill. Oh, no, sorry. Frank, you're up.
So really quick, I applaud planning and zoning for the metrics they put in their brief, which were tremendous. I think we need to live by those metrics. And a recommendation, as I stated earlier, when we all jumped for joy about the AI capability, I think we're good to go.
Great.
End of brief.
Keeping it fast. Beautiful. Alderman O'Neill, Police Department.
Police Department, I tried to keep it short and sweet. Good news, 640 community outreach. They have increased their clearance rates for top, what I call most violent of happening, so they're well above the national average for doing that. They have continued to have challenges with staffing and filling vacancies and recruitment. My recommendation is strive towards 100% occupancy of sworn officers. I know there's been a lot of questions about, is our 126 an actual number, or should it be the 135 that would account for our adequate public facilities number? I believe it's 135, 132.
Somewhere around there.
Exactly. So the only other recommendation would be, what would be the difference if we actually put the number of officers in that is the national requirement, which I believe is 135, if we wanted to add that as a recommendation.
I would not. But strive towards 100% occupancy of sworn officers, I feel is a great goal. I feel like maybe we can say that a little more clearly. Strive towards 100%, or maybe say strive towards 0% vacancy for sworn officers.
Sure.
Is that, I know what you're getting at, but I'm
Yeah.
just not sure the public would understand vacancy of sworn officer position.
Everybody good with those?
Yep.
Do you think I left anything out?
I don't, but there was a lot of discussion about drones and speed cameras, and we don't need to put that in there? I don't think we need it. I'm not saying we should, but just to make sure that our sentiment is communicated.
I mean, if you all three agree on, we support the drone additions and red light camera additions, let's just write that. Yeah.
Speed cameras.
Well, they're doing both.
Right.
You want speed camera but not red light?
No, I want speed more than red light, but I'd be game for both.
Okay, I'm gonna just write speed. So strongly support run program and speed.
Fire department response times continue to meet or exceed national standards. In this budget, it does fund the peak unit. As discussed, there was a question for me on that. While it's good news, there's also an earmark by the county to partially fund it, which we can't count on, but I didn't know how to put that in here. Because if we realize that savings of 258,250, just call it 250,000. If we actually get that passed through the county, where would that savings be allocated? Which could kind of come to, I know that there was a lot of amendments in regard to this CIP budget and perhaps they realized there. Challenges that 2.9 million in overtime, need of more office space that was not approved in the budget, and the way EMS billing changes are taking place, it could reduce overall department revenue.
Would you be okay with me adding or slow growth at the end of that? Reduce or slow growth?
I see the committee's recommendations about the full accounting of all the costs and revenue from the peak time.
Yeah, so I wrote that, and I'm happy to explain it if you'd like. So what I was getting at there is partially what you're saying, that we have this county revenue, which to me it makes sense, and I don't know, maybe Ms. Flaherty or Ms. Turner can weigh in on it, but to me it makes perfect sense to include that, even if it's not in our hands. I think we can trust the county executive's word. It also doesn't include any estimate of the revenue from EMS billing. And then there are also some costs that I think are left out. We don't see any increase to repair and maintenance for the units or for the uniforms. And so I put together what I thought was, as best I could, a whole cost revenue accounting of the peak time medic unit. And my preference is to include, doesn't have to be like my thing, it's perfect, but include as many of the costs and revenues as we expect, rather than, as we so often do, doing it in the most conservative way possible. So, yeah, what I'm getting at is it should all be in there.
I can confirm that the cost, all of the calls for the unit are included. They were included with the enhancement request. And I believe the fire chief spoke to the revenue side of it, that it would not increase the EMS billing revenues because it's what they're currently doing with what the staff they have now. So if anything, it may reduce some of the overtime, but I believe he spoke to that as well, saying that that wouldn't reduce it either. That's why it was not included.
So what I heard from him as to why the revenue from medical billing was not necessarily getting included is that we wouldn't have people on day one. We might not actually get it going until 6 months from now. But we're paying for the people as though we're having them on day one. So to me, we should just be consistent with the costs and revenue. Either we expect this to happen in 6 months or we don't. And we should try and have both of those things match that.
So we do have, historically, we always budget 2 months of vacancy savings for all new positions.
Oh, okay.
We forgot to include that in the budget, but it will be coming forth as an amendment to do so. However, we did not do 6 months. We only did 2 months.
Sure, I mean, I'm fine with whatever is realistic. I just think we should
Yes,
include
that's
it.
fair.
And similarly, if we think this will be operational 2 months in, then we should start getting the revenue 2 months in, and we should just discount that by 1/6. And Ms. Turner, I just want to dig in. You said all the costs were included in the budget enhancement, but I think the budget enhancement only went to salaries and benefits and to the actual medic unit. Wasn't there, what about the line items for repair and maintenance? Those didn't seem like they went up.
So they include, if they feel what they're asking for exceeds what they propose for their repair and maintenance account, they include it. Outside of that, the request for the build of the position, the personnel enhancement, includes anything of that position that may be an expense as well. So it's the cost of the position, the benefits, any training and education, cell phones, any expenses that come along with that position as well.
Uniforms?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm digging into this still, but the repair and maintenance for vehicles in FY '26 was $776,500 for the fire department. We're gonna have a new vehicle next year. We're gonna have two new vehicles. Well, one's a replacement, but we're gonna have on net one new. And we're only increasing it by a little under $8,000? Is that really like a realistic estimate?
If it's a new vehicle, I wouldn't expect it to have high expenses for the first year. It would be in FY '28.
Okay. I still think we could say include full accounting of cost of revenue. And we can kind of hammer out exactly what that is, and just like we're doing now. But,
I'm fine with that.
yeah, okay. Thank you, Ms. Turner. I feel like I was kind of grilling you there. I didn't mean to.
Not at all.
Fine, are we good?
Bree doesn't like it. Yeah, go ahead.
All right.
I'm sorry, Alderman Thorpe, did you have something else for fire? No. No, go ahead.
OEM, good news, they helped with City Dock funding, coordinated the emergency response to Storm Fern, and we've seen a significant reduction in total overdoses, sorry. Biggest challenges are federal grants that have not materialized, and in an increase in festivals, events, and parades, which add planning hours and workload to the staff. If that trend remains, the department will need to request more staff for FY '28. But the director seemed to think that he was covered in FY '27. So we did convert 3 positions from grant-funded positions into the operating budget.
And so, no recommendations.
I didn't have any other recommendations.
Keeps it. You got anything, any last recommendations we need, Mr. Mandel, since you're here?
Just appreciate your support, especially with regard to
And I'll just repeat for the record what Deputy Director Mandel said, which was essentially appreciated the council supporting the positions that had previously been federally funded, but had not received that money.
Yes.
Okay, no recommendations, keeping it easy.
Yeah.
Public Works, that should be easy, right, Alderman Thorpe?
Yeah, a lot of good news coming out of Public Works, the City Dock and the FEMA grant, the 2 big ones, as well as the effort to revise the stormwater utility fee structure and the fee reduction program for non-residential properties. The traffic safety concept designs for West Street, Edgewood, and Hilltop. I want to commend them. I think we should commend them for the clear results based on data-driven performance metrics that Public Works has. And I thought it was noteworthy on the good news, tremendous response to the major snow and ice storm. Road surfacing and exceeded benchmarks for high quality and safe drinking water, something we take for granted quite a bit. On challenges, I think throughout the briefings there was discussion. This goes to the point number 1 on the top of the report about visible improvements as well as the essential infrastructure. And Alderman Huntley, I agree with your addition of such as sewer mains. I think that's a great point.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out what less visible looks like, because I think
Yep.
in a lot of cases, we were saying the infrastructure is the visible thing.
Yeah. And then just shooting down to committee recommendations. I think what we heard during the briefings was that Director Vogel tried to save a couple dollars on his technology for snow removal, and I think it's the sentiment of the Finance Committee that we fully fund that technology improvement. The recommendation to support the challenges up there, that emphasis on resources on visible infrastructure. Continue to provide a quarterly update. I think that's been very valuable, and I didn't mention it in here, probably could have, and if you guys want to go back and put it in there, there appears to be a lot of effort gone into clarifying and cleaning up the CIP projects and reducing them and consolidating them. And I don't know that it needs to be added, but I think that will make our quarterly updates much more important. And then we didn't talk about it at length, but I do think it's the sentiment of the committee that we would like to see more resources spent and work and amount of time and effort on street cleaning. And it would be the only place in here that it's mentioned, so.
Yeah, and I appreciated the fact that Director Vogel had indicated that the snowplow software could be utilized by the street cleaners.
Yeah.
I think that that's something that I've asked for 5 years. Just get a heads up. Let me know next week. The street cleaners could be on my street. So I think that that's an important part of also agreeing to that software upgrade for them.
I had one little thing I wanted to change in this, which was just where we say response to major snow and ice storm, it says tremendous. I maybe suggest we switch that to impressive, in that Public Works response was impressive. They worked very hard. We were all impressed with how hard they worked. At the same time, I think if I went around town and asked residents to rate the response, they would not rate it as tremendous in terms of the outcomes that they experienced. You okay with it, impressive? Or you want to disagree?
I would lean towards tremendous. I wouldn't stand in front of the railroad tracks. I mean, I think as we were all trying to dig out of it, I think we thought it was horrible because of the inconvenience and the problems it caused. But I think as we look back and we saw the reports of the after action and the severity of the storm, now to your point, we could have tremendous response to major snow. I'd be fine with impressive, but I also put in there tremendous kudos for their acknowledgement and effort to improve what didn't go right. And so maybe if you wanted to go with impressive response to snow and ice storm and commitment to improve, or maybe tremendous, and commitment to improve that which needs to be improved, or something like that.
Impressive. Boy, talk about splitting the difference. Impressive response to major snow and ice storm, and tremendous commitment to improve where there are opportunities to do so. Work for you?
That'll work for me.
Cool. I just don't want to get pilloried for that later. But a bunch of people who were not happy with the response. As hard as we all agree, Public Works worked on it, there's a distinction between how much effort went in and the results coming out. So any changes to the recommendations or other parts of the Public Works? Okay. All right, moving on to Rec and Parks. These guys' presentation was well suited for our our format here of good news and challenges. I did include as a challenge that we did not see targets for revenue growth. Maybe there's a better way to phrase that, but I think that was a real challenge that we heard. You want got a better way to phrase it?
I would just delete the word growth.
Sure.
I mean, we didn't see any targets for revenue,
Yeah.
period. I mean, whether we want growth or not. And I would argue in some places we maybe don't want growth in this area.
So as far as recommendations, I heard loud and clear that we want to see more maintenance of our parks. I tried to leave some wiggle room, uncertainty on this, both in exactly how we should spend that money and where we should get it from, but I made some suggestions. And then this one about establish maintenance schedules for parks to set public expectations, that was from Alderwoman O'Neill, and I think that's a great idea. And then I let you guys work on the Harbor House pool part, so. Yeah.
Before we get to the pool, establish published maintenance schedules for parks to set public expectations. I think there's another part of that too, which is, my understanding is there's a tremendous backlog. And I never saw a report on what the maintenance backlog.
Right.
And I think that should be a required report. Especially the backlog that is beyond the life cycle or the plan or whatever.
I get what you're saying. I think we're talking about two slightly different things.
Right, I do too.
Yeah, you're talking more about facilities, and I'm talking more about parks. And, because you're talking about buildings not being maintained, right?
Well, across the board, not just buildings, but other maintenance, ball courts, and all that. So you're right, I agree with you, it's different. It could be a different bullet here, but
Yeah, I agree with adding that bullet as a recommendation for the department to create a report that does talk about the schedule for facilities. And facilities meaning ballparks, gymnasiums.
Provide committee with report on deferred facilities maintenance. Is that good?
so to me, it's almost as important as Public Works' quarterly report on CIP. Because if things aren't being repaired in Parks and Recs because of a lack of resources, we should know about that on a quarterly basis. And I understand there being a maintenance backlog, and there probably should be by philosophy, but I'd like to know, is it growing or is it shrinking? And I'd like to know on a quarterly basis so that when we come time for budget, it's part of the discussion.
Absolutely. I've both put in that recommendation here and also noted it as an opportunity for a briefing for a future finance committee hearing.
Yeah.
All right, Alderwoman O'Neill, you want to talk about the pool?
It's not in my ward, but it's important to a lot of people. And I think I told you that trying to pull resources. In fact, I got 2 phone calls while we've been sitting here with people that are trying to help us with a resource to open the pool. In reaching out to Neely, she had also reached out to a pool management company. And it looks like that's the direction we're going to go, is hiring a pool management company to do it, because it does not appear that Rexham Park is able to manage that with staffing and with, I'm going to call it maintenance, but having a pool manager who can check the chemical levels, make sure that we've got the right chemicals. I do have a slight request. It's currently empty pool, and I would love to see if we could find some way somehow to paint lane lines on the bottom of it before we fill it, because that would increase its usage availability. There is an organization that would run their swimming practices there, and we could also run swim team if we had that. Swim team and swim lessons by nonprofit organizations.
Something to add to that, Alderwoman?
I jumped in.
So, speaking with Director Johnson, she did recommend that HACA hire a pool company, as you said. A pool operator is required at that pool, and the person who did it last year is no longer available. And Rec and Parks has been having difficulty finding lifeguards. It's even for running Dunn Pool. They think they'll get there for Dunn. She said, we always do, but then we don't have guards for HACA. And the guards that said they would work there last year, some of them, when their parents found out, said they refused to let them work at HACA Pool because they felt it was unsafe. So she obviously can't force them to work there. And then some of the other guards just refused to do so because they felt it was unsafe. So if we hire a pool management company, they will have a certified manager, as you said, for all the levels in the pumping system and other machinery there. But they also have a pool of lifeguards that they can send in on a temporary basis as needed, on a full-time basis as needed, and they manage all the payment of that. So as Rosalind tries to fill her own needs at her pool, this is probably the best solution, rather than waiting on Roz to get guards, see if she could do it or not. So that is the direction they're going in.
Yeah.
So,
Well, let me just ask real quick. Is the funding that's in the budget already adequate for that?
Director Johnson believes so. I believe it's $44,000 or something like that. That may not be the right number. It's close to that. She thinks that we're trying to figure out how to get that money to them without the city. Her worry is that if we pay the pool operator directly, then the city would look like we are responsible for that pool operator when HACA's hiring the pool operator. So working with finance to, how do we do that? How do we make sure the funds can be transferred for the use of HACA, but the city is not responsible for the operation of the pool and managing the operator? So we'll work that out.
so this is pretty complex, but it really should be easy. This exact conversation happened in January and February of 2026. Are on May 11th, and we have not hired a pool operator company. So there is adequate financial resources. There is a lack of clarity as to responsibilities. One decision that's been made is that the city pays for the lifeguards, and therefore that pool is open to anyone in the city. People like that. There's all kinds of social benefits to that, including what Alderwoman O'Neill stated. And so we have a clear confusion of authorities going on as to who should hire who. And I think Jackie just mentioned it. So we've got to clarify for 2027 who is responsible for that pool being open. Is it Recs and Parks, which is where I think it should be, or is it HACA? And when you get shared responsibility, nobody's responsible. And that's why we spent 4 months this year, and the pool is still, the fact the pool's still empty is good news because we can get lines painted on it. It's bad news is in that it's supposed to open in less than 2 weeks. And so I would recommend a line in here that says that the city manager should determine, whatever the right word are, go to the effort to determine who is responsible for opening, and I would call it the Harbor House Pool rather than the HACA Pool, the Harbor House Pool on Memorial Day 2027.
Yeah. Whoever wants to jump in.
I need the Office of Law to jump in here.
Yeah, so the only problem with that is HACA is a separate entity and they own this property, so we can't actually force them to do anything, nor can we legally take over the pool.
There's an MOU. Every year they do an MOU.
Yes, and I write it, but that MOU does not give us that sort of authority. HACA would have to grant us that.
Right.
I'm not sure, I haven't been involved in this year's conversations. In the past, HACA has not been willing to grant us that level of control.
So that goes to my point, that we need somebody, and I think it should be the city manager, so the fact we don't have.
She can
wait,
ask,
wait,
but we
can I-
can't tell them.
Can I finish?
Yeah.
So the MOU should be done in this year for next year, and it should clearly state what the city responsibilities are going to be and what HACA's responsibilities are going to be. And that should be our negotiating tool. If we're putting $45,000 into this, we should get a lot in return. And so who is responsible for what is totally up to, I think, the city manager as this is worked, but it should be signed by the end of the year so that it's done and everybody knows their responsibilities.
If we take control, though, you do understand that we're also assuming liability and insurance for it. So if HACA agrees to this and they give us full operational control, then all liabilities
I didn't
related.
say, I'm sorry to interrupt you back, but I didn't say full operational. I don't care. I just want to know who's got the responsibility pinned on them to open this pool. And right now, it's this.
Well,
Well, that's because it's an act, we have figured this out. I've done the MOU for the last 2 years, but the problem is it's a give and take negotiation.
Right.
And when you're coming down to it, these are the material things that sort of stall the conversation is, yes, we're offering them money, but are we also offering help with insurance or liability? And like I said, I have figured it out for the last 2 years. We've had MOUs executed to get the pools open. But as things shift in HACA's world, it's a harder conversation this year.
And so what I think matters for this is there enough money to get it done? And it sounds like there's a lot of questions about, boy, who's responsible, how do we give it to them, whatever. But my question is there enough money? The answer seems to be a resounding yes. So I think the recommendation is use existing funding in the budget to hire, let's put this in the passive voice, for a pool
Can I interrupt you?
management company.
I'm not sure
to be
it's
hired.
budgeted. Is it budgeted, Karma? Or do they have
There's
money?
$45,000 in the
It
budget
is,
for it.
is it
So
budget?
there's $45,000 in the budget for Rex and Parks to manage the pool for it to be open. But for Rex and Parks to take full management operation of it, it'll exceed the 45,000.
So let me,
The 45,000 only, the 45,000 is based off of the current operation hours with the current access that they have, staff, and a small budget for repair and maintenance that the manager does herself.
In past years, HACA has contributed financially to it. So the city wasn't paying for the full operation. We were, I believe in last year's, we were basically paying in-kind services, where we were supplying our staff to supplement what HACA was already paying. HACA was paying for their own management, their own operators, and city staff was being sort of loaned out to supplement what HACA was doing. It sounds like this year HACA is not able to bring as much to the table, and so then it's a different negotiation this year versus the last 2 years.
is the negotiation ongoing?
I haven't been actively involved in it, yes, but yes, I believe discussions are going on.
so there's no negotiation ongoing quite yet as we're trying, but now is the time to do it, since we have figured out that HACA is going to manage the pool through a pool operator, and it's not in an MOU yet, but there's an agreement that we will somehow get them the money so that they can, the $45,000. And in the past also, HACA had a pool person who's certified as a pool operator on their staff. He's not available this year. So that could be an additional cost where they're going to have to contribute a little bit more. So I just want to say that up front, though, Recreation and Parks is not responsible. They don't have to manage the HACA pool. They would like to see it open. They'd like to see that available for residents, especially in that community. And they've done in the past, which Ashley's worked out with MOUs, using the people that Rec and Parks hires as lifeguards. So this is something that will have to be negotiated again this year. How much is HACA going to contribute? We know what the city can contribute through it being budgeted. We can't wait for this budget to pass, because we went to open the pool on Memorial Day, and that's come up around the corner.
Right.
So, and the reason I know this much about it, I was not involved in January. If I had been, I guarantee you this will be a lot further along. But for the last few months, I have been designated, at least 3 months now, I've been designated responsibility for Rec and Parks. They directly report to me now. And this all just came to my attention, so I'm trying to get this accelerated and move this along. But I think now that we just worked this out with Hacken the last week, that yes, you should be the ones to get the pool operator. So now we can go to Ashley and start working on some terms.
I already have a shell agreement.
And I understand how important this is. I want to make sure you have what you need to get it done. I also want to make sure we can keep ourselves moving on this.
It's a separate subject.
Okay, so I try to write this in the most passive voice in such a way that it leaves a lot of options open. But as right now, it says use funding in proposed budget to cause a pool management company to be hired, whether that is by whoever, for the Harbor House pool so that it can be opened. Are we good enough with that? Okay, great. Moving on to ADOT.
Wait, just one moment.
Oh, God,
Alderman.
I thought we were good enough.
Well, the way you've said that is that we're responsible for the management, which the city would not be responsible for the management. That would be HACA.
No, I intentionally did not write it that way. We are using the money that is in the budget so that a pool management company gets hired. There is an input and there's an
misheard you.
output, and however it gets from one to the other is not my budgetary concern.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Department of Transportation. Secured grant funding. They have a strong service in parking as far as enforcement coverage, meter readiness and compliant response. Challenges are always fixed routes and how we run those and how many people are on them. We've asked for some data. The ridership also is there. And then the ability to collect fares electronically to adjust to modern money habits is one of the challenges. We're recommending for the department to consider ways to expand Annapolis Go to more parts of the city, as well as longer hours, operate electric shuttle in Eastport as opposed to downtown, as it had last year during the pilot, and work with the parking contractors to try to consolidate parking apps. That's a big one.
Yeah.
Alderwoman, could you clarify something for me? Did I hear you correctly that said you would prefer the electric shuttle to work at Eastport rather than downtown, or was that an and downtown?
Rather than downtown. I know that they moved the electric shuttle from Eastport during the pilot last year to downtown in order to increase downtown. But as we spoke last week, Alderman Huntley said he would just as soon people continue to use the Magenta shuttle and send it back to Eastport where people are begging for that to come back.
Yeah, and just to be clear, I think you're lumping both loops into downtown broadly. I was talking specifically about the Dock Street loop, right? There is still the Maryland Avenue one, which I think is helpful because it's not served by the Magenta shuttle. But
Yes.
given that Dock Street is now served by the Magenta shuttle, it seems like this would be more useful in Eastport.
Thank you.
Are they good with that? Any additions? Great. Community grants, the review team suggested community grants. 62 applications were received. They awarded 35. Previously, we had community grants were closer to 450,000. This year, they're 373,700. We went through the list suggesting some changes. I did get Leonard's suggestion that some of them may not have been vetted, and I was waiting to hear back from Aisha to confirm. I thought we were told that everybody that was on the list had turned in their application, and Just waiting for confirmation. There was 5 that we changed, that we added that the committee did not suggest.
Could you highlight those?
Yes, we added Annapolis Pride, Play Annapolis, One Annapolis, Kingdom Care, and Bates Legacy Center. Sorry, 6, and Blacks of the Chesapeake. Somehow the number,
And
I
where,
need to update this again, Kalen, because the number did change. The bottom number, sorry, the total.
so, and then can you tell us where money came from relative to what was recommended?
Yes, so we pulled money from Anne Arundel County Department of Social Services. We pulled money from Heritage Baptist Church Food Pantry and Heritage Baptist Church Community Garden. We pulled $2,500 from Restoration Community Development and Marshall Hope Food and Baby Pantry. Assistance League of the Chesapeake, we reduced down by 10,000. Here, all was reduced.
Salvation Army was one you talked about.
Salvation Army, correct.
And then wasn't there also Anne Arundel County Food Bank is one you had talked about possibly reducing?
You did, sorry.
Oh, I see. Yeah, so FY '27 recommendation was 20,000. We bumped it down to 10. I normally really try to defer to you on these because I think you know it a lot better. But one of that jumps out to me is the community garden getting reduced down to 0. Do you feel, I just love a community garden.
We pulled that down because basically Heritage Baptist Church was already receiving $12,000, and several people that I talked to talked about the fact that they could do fundraising for the community garden through the church. And that we would make an assessment, but it was important to keep the food pantry and the backpack program because those are 2 that we have supported over the years, and that supports our initiative to make sure that where there's food deserts, because that was a $2,500 ask, we found that they could probably get that funding from someplace else. One of the things that I looked at and have asked the committee to look at over the years is places where there's double funding or contributions coming from different areas. But I'm open to making a change on that if we wanted to decrease.
I think fundamentally, a community garden for $2,500, to your point, is something that somebody could really fundraise for. It's sexy enough. You can go and get donors. There's a part of me that hurts my heart that that's the thing we're not funding, but I totally get we make tough decisions. And at the end of the day, if we want to feed people, a food pantry is probably going to do more of it than a community garden, so.
I will say, kind of outside of this discussion, I'm also working with the Eastport Community Gardens and Joy Grows to write an amendment to give them funding, and working towards next year, possibly having them as part of economic development and a line item there, which would increase it, which they would be then able to spread out a wider net in the community if it was concentrated, so could actually assist with this community garden.
Cool, okay. Yeah, like I said, I know we gotta make tough choices on these, so I feel like your explanation was good enough. Oh, Ms. Leonard, yeah.
Aisha did send me 4 today, which I'm assuming she wants me to share. I did check, Bates Legacy is not currently in good standing with the state of Maryland.
And we will pull that.
What?
Then we will pull that.
Yeah. I know they're attempting to work on it, but I don't know exactly what they have to resolve and when it would be resolved. She did have, with regards to Kingdom Care, she's indicated that their application indicated that they already had a substantial amount of funding. And so she wasn't sure whether the 5% we had proposed would have much of an impact given the other resources that they had. With regards to Annapolis, both Annapolis Pride and Blacks of the Chesapeake, she indicated that she was a little concerned about, with Blacks of the Chesapeake, there wasn't a lot of a breakdown about what they were going to use the money for, and they were hoping to get more details as to exactly how the funding was going to be expended. And with Annapolis Pride, they were concerned that given how much money they need for what they were asking for, which I believe was an executive director position, they didn't know if they would be able to sort of reach sort of a long-term sustainability, given that that they haven't fully demonstrated that they have all the money that they would need for that position, even with the city contribution. Not that that necessarily needs to change your mind per se, it was just, those were their reasonings on those particular ones.
Yeah. In discussions about that, we felt like if we were able to give them 50%, I looked at what the county had given Annapolis Pride for FY '26 and what they requested for FY '27. And it seems to be that the county would have a match to ours, or pretty close to a match, so that they would be able to hire the development director and therefore be farther ahead in sustainability. So
Again, just
Yeah.
deferring
No,
to
I
you, just
appreciate
those are her thoughts.
But
So,
let's make sure I'm clear on the ones that are actually not meeting our requirements, which was just,
as far as I know,
just Bates Legacy.
he is not currently in good standing with the state. The other three are more of a discretionary.
yeah, got it. Well,
Well, that would give you some money back
I guess
into
we
your
could,
community.
yeah, I guess we could go support a community garden.
Okay. I'll make those changes, and can we include those changes as committee amendments to the budget? I have to make changes on the masters in order for Kalen to convert it and put it into the report.
I just want to make sure I understand what changes you're going to make.
I'm going to remove the funding for Bates Legacy.
Yep.
I will remove the funding for Kingdom Care. I will add back in the $2,500 for garden.
Can I make a comment? Did we zero out the Annapolis Maritime Museum based on anything more than our discussion on?
I zeroed it out based on on sort of that idea that people get funding from other sources, the fact that they have a city lease that is, I believe, $1 a year,
Yeah,
and
times two.
both the Maritime Museum and CRAB, I couldn't think of what it was called other than CRAB, Chesapeake Regional Accessible Boating, have the opportunities to use their buildings for revenue. So I felt like if we had other organizations that didn't have opportunities for bringing in revenue, then we could offset it by pulling back on those.
Got it. I would just, my concern about zeroing them out is they do a lot of great things for needs-based kids who, in schools and all that. They have other funding resources too. So I would just say if there's money available, it'd be great to include them. But they're not going to close their programs if you don't fund them, like some others might.
Happy to include. The other suggestions were all done by other older people as well, so I believe that everybody should have that opportunity to
Yeah.
vouch for one.
Maybe if out of that 10,000 that was going to Wiley H. Bates, we put 2,500 to Maritime Museum, 2,500 to Community Garden, and then talk to Alderwoman Alsop Johnson about if there's somewhere else in Ward 4 that could be similarly helpful as the Legacy Center.
Okay,
I would be fine with that.
yes.
And just sort of adopting that by voice vote. Yeah, okay, so with that, I think we've got our community grant set. So that's everything. Anybody got anything they'd like to talk about before we just take a vote on, make sure we're all behind these amendments? These recommendations, I should say.
And these Finance Committee final recommendations are what Kaylin has put in?
Yeah, she's been copying them as we've been
Perfect.
doing it. Yep.
I'm good.
So the only question I have is are we breaking out anywhere in this report amendments that we're proposing?
I don't feel like out, but I will work with Ms. Turner and with you guys to make sure that there's nothing that is in this list of recommendations that doesn't get put forward as an amendment if it needs it.
Okay, and you'll send that list to Alderwoman O'Neill and I?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because again, with the new way that we're going to do amendments, I think also it's a little less, they don't have to be quite as precise, right? Like we don't have to say, boy, we have to have this paid for in here as in the way that we might have in the past. We might have, let me put it this way. In the past, if I wanted to fund roads and sidewalks out of the city dock project, I would put forward an amendment to do that. And the finance committee might have to put forward one separately saying, we want to fund roads and sidewalks out of whatever other CIP, public water access. And whereas this year we don't, those two things are not really distinct.
Yeah, I think this might be a philosophical comment more than anything else, but as we've gone through this process and we've benefited from all this staff work, I think that finance committee amendments should both reflect the good of the city, not the good of the ward, individual wards, and therefore carry more weight.
Yeah.
And so as this process evolves, where we're not competing for one-time use money, et cetera, I think that's one thing that we want to look at. I'd like finance committee amendments like we've done to make them ward agnostic and carry the weight that we heard the brief.
Absolutely. Yep. And I think whether we do it this year or not, some, or maybe we get to a point even of all of the finance committee amendments could be in that sort of exempted category that we're talking about. Some of them, I think, certainly this year, it doesn't make sense to. But there could be some this year, and we can maybe even want to work to a point where they all are that way. So I would call for a motion to approve the recommendations and the finance committee report as written, with the caveat that we're going to tighten up the community grants at Alderwoman O'Neill's discretion. Maybe I shouldn't say discretion, in line with what we've just discussed. We're going to approve this, and we're going to give Alderwoman O'Neill $500,000 to just sort of play around with. No. Is there a motion on the table to approve the finance committee report as currently written with the addition of community grant recommendations that are about to come?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
With that, folks, we are halfway through the budget season. It was April 13th, the mayor revealed it, and we've done the hard work for the past 3 weeks. These guys have been doing the hard work for months, but you got to feel like you're getting close to the end. But we, the council, is halfway through it, and I think we've put together a really great product for our colleagues to understand all the work that we've done over the past 3 weeks, what they can take out of it, and it's been a real pleasure working with everybody in this room, but particularly two people to my left and right. Anything else we need to do today, Ms. Jackson?
I don't think so. I believe that's it.
All right. Well, with that, I think it's time for a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Beautiful. Motion carries, meeting adjourned.